So our next video on the sociology of inequality, we're going to look at poverty for a few lessons. And this is absolute versus relative poverty. So, why might the bourgeoisie care that the proletariat were too poor? A lot of this research started when the bourgeoisie, members of the bourgeoisie, became worried that the proletariat were too poor. And you might think, well, if you're a Marxist, they wouldn't care as long as they got the money. But the idea was, well, maybe they're getting too poor to work. Maybe they're not going to survive long enough to be workers. Maybe the men aren't healthy enough to serve in our armed forces or work in our factories. And the bourgeoisie did care, which leads to the first really important piece of research done on poverty in the UK was done by a man called C-Bomb Rowntree in 1900. Here he is, in the city of York. He personally went round and surveyed the poor. The Rowntrees, I've been into this for a long time. This is the Rowntrees, the fruit pastoral people, and they now pay for lots of social research. And C-Bomb Rowntree found that he had about 10% of the population in what he called primary poverty, did not really have enough money to survive. But 28% of the population of York was in secondary poverty. They had just about enough to survive, but not really much more. So that's quite a large chunk of people in poverty. But the poverty he's talking about was absolute poverty, not relative poverty. Yeah? In absolute poverty, you do not have enough money to survive. Yeah? But relative's different. Relative poverty, if you've got this car and this plane, but everybody else you know has 5 of those cars, 2 of those planes, and this ship and 10 houses, you feel poor. Yeah? That is relative poverty. Relative poverty. You feel poor. These people here today, you'd say they're in relative poverty. They're not in danger of dying, they have enough food, they've got somewhere to live, but they're poor compared to most people. It's actually calculated as an average. 50% of the average. What that means is there's an average income, let's say it's 30 grand a year. If you earn less than 15 grand a year, you're technically poor. That's the poverty line. Yeah? So you can answer these questions. Not enough to survive. No, there's not, because of the welfare state. Poor compared to everybody else. 50% average. Is there much of it? Yep. Can we get rid of it? No. Yeah, especially to a Marxist. And what is relative deprivation? It's the same thing. If you get a question of relative deprivation, it means the same as relative poverty. You are deprived of things that most people have.